Lex injusta non est lex. Unjust law is not law at all. Is this true? So does the law really need to be moral for it to actually be called a law? Today we are diving into natural law theory, which is the idea that law and morality are connected, and we'll explore how this has evolved through the ages. We'll trace it from ancient Greece to the modern day. You will meet Aristotle, Cicero, Aquinas, Grotius, and even John Finnis. We'll look at why natural law fell out of favor and why it might be relevant in the 21st century more than ever. Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. In this channel, we explore the fascinating world of law and try to answer some of the more philosophical questions like what is law and why do we follow the law. My name is Mahela and I'm a lawyer by profession, and I've also been teaching law for over 15 years. I've also written a book which tries to answer this question of what is law. You can check it out by clicking on the link in the description below. In today's episode, we're going to look at natural law theory and how it has evolved through the ages. Let's get started. So what really is natural law? Let's start very simple. Natural law says that there are universal moral rules that is common to every human, and they exist whether or not they have been written down by humans. You can contrast that with positivism, which says that the morality of the law is irrelevant. All that matters is that somebody who has authority has passed it as law. Imagine a law that says kill all blue-eyed babies. Positivism will say that it is valid if it's properly passed, regardless of whether it's just or not. But natural law would say that it's not really law because it is immoral. Natural law also believes in something called the teleological approach. Teleology believes that everything has a purpose. Aristotle says that the ultimate purpose of an acorn is to grow into an oak tree. Similarly, according to most natural law writers, human beings also have an ultimate purpose. And these writers believe that the law should help us to achieve this ultimate purpose and not deter us from this ultimate purpose. The roots of natural law theory can be traced all the way back to the Greek civilization. Firstly, Socrates believes that there existed objective principles of morality which can be discovered through man's reasoning and insight. He believed that positive law should not be blindly followed and that it should only be followed if it satisfies these higher natural law principles. Plato believed that concepts of good, justice, virtue, and honesty are eternal and immutable. Therefore, he believed that these moral principles must be used to judge the actions of humans. He also spoke of someone called the philosopher king, and that this philosopher king can unlock this absolute justice by consulting the mystery locked in his heart. Next, we have Aristotle, who believed that men naturally live through reasoning, and through this universal reasoning, the universal laws by which men should live can be discovered. He also believed that the teleological approach governed human behavior. He explains that the ultimate purpose of human beings is to live a good life and flourish. So the law should help facilitate this ultimate purpose. Therefore, only moral and just laws should be tolerated in society. Then we have the Romans. The most famous of the Roman philosophers is Cicero. He believed that true law is the right reason in agreement with nature, and any human law that contradicts natural law is not truly law. He also believed that natural law was universal in application, unchanging, and everlasting. He also saw natural law as the moral standard that should govern civil laws, aiming to align human legislation with common good and justice. Fast forward to the Middle Ages, and the most important contributor for natural law is St. Thomas Aquinas. Aquinas mixed natural law with Christianity, and he believed that morality or natural law was dictated to by God. He explained that there were four types of laws: eternal law, which is God's divine reasoning which is only known to God; divine law, God's divine reasoning which has been revealed to humans through the scriptures; natural law, the divine reasoning of the universe that humans can access through their reasoning power; and human law, which is positive law created by human lawmakers. So according to Aquinas, human beings can learn the divine reasoning of God by consulting their reasoning power and the scriptures. And this understanding should be the basis for human law. Aquinas also aligned with the position that lex injusta non est lex, which effectively means an unjust law is not law. Then came the Renaissance. Thinkers like Grotius elevated natural law beyond being dependent on God. Grotius said that natural law is based on human reason and the inherent needs of social life, not solely on divine command. Grotius believed that natural law remains valid even if we concede that there is no God, emphasizing its rational and universal character. Grotius advised lawmakers to base laws on principles of natural law derived from human reason and the necessities of social life, ensuring they promote self-preservation, peace, and common good. Grotius was also part of a slew of writers who tried to secularize the law, which include writers like Thomas Hobbes. Francisco de Vitoria was another writer who argued that natural law was universal, applying equally to all humans regardless of culture, nation, or religion. Vitoria saw natural law as superior to positive human laws and as guiding principles for justice and human behavior across all people. Now, natural law was obviously not perfect. In fact, it had one serious flaw. Writers began to criticize it as saying that morality is subjective. Basically, what's right is unclear. They preferred legal positivism, which was written, clear, and was not dependent on morality. But with natural law falling out of favor, some argue that society lost its moral guide. Wars, tyranny, and injustice of the early 20th century showed the risk of ignoring morality. But positivists maintained that at least their definition was clear and predictable. Following the atrocities of the Second World War, there was a revival of natural law. The main architect of this revival was John Finnis. But Finnis attempted not to fall into the same pitfalls that the early writers fell into. He focused on basic human goods. He believed that there were 7 basic human goods which all humans valued. These were life, knowledge, friendship, play, aesthetic experience, religion, and practical reasonableness. And natural law was simply doing the most practically reasonable thing to pursue these 7 values. The clever part of Finnis was that he didn't rely on God. It was all about reason and human flourishing. So natural law became something that everybody could use, even in secular societies. Today, natural law is being used in debates which influence human well-being, from human rights to constitutional law to bioethics. But of course, it's still not perfect. Critics point out that it is still vague, culturally biased, and difficult to reconcile when societies have different moral standards. A good example is debates on things like abortion and euthanasia. Different countries have different opinions on whether this kind of thing is moral or not. So is it useful today? Natural law reminds us to ask the question, are the laws helping humans flourish? Are they moral? Even today, it challenges us to not blindly follow a law which says kill all blue-eyed babies. Instead, ask, is it right or moral? Natural law has had its ups and downs through the ages. But its core message still remains. Law isn't just a set of rules, it's about doing what's right. And in a world that's more polarized than ever and where tensions run high, maybe, just maybe, this message is more important than ever. Lex injusta non est lex. So what do you think? Do you think the law needs to be moral for it to be valid? Let me know in the comments below. And check out the video which is on screen next to find out more about the differences between natural law and positivism. I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.